In this lecture, we are going to study techniques for VM live migration. So what is live migration? It is the process of migrating a VM from one physical host to another while everything in the VM is running, that is without having to shut down the machine. So we will migrate all the user processes as well as the operating system, everything from one physical host to another. So why is this needed? Why is this functionality needed? It is needed because for many reasons. For example, in a cloud, you have many VMs on a physical host and somehow there's overload of that machine. So you might want to shift VMs to another machine. Similarly, if you find that some machines are underutilized, you might want to consolidate all the VMs from multiple machines into one machine so that the other physical hosts can be freed up. So there are several reasons why you might want to do this in a cloud setting. And even if you don't have a large cloud, even for convenience, if you have just a standalone, a few machines also, sometimes a machine, a host, a physical host has some issues, you might want to take it down for maintenance, but you don't want to impact the applications running on it. So in such cases, you can migrate the VM to another host and then free up this host for maintenance. So VM live migration is something that is commonly done for several reasons like this. And note that virtualizing an application inside a VM makes it easier to migrate it than if the application were just running as a process on a host OS. Why? Because if you have to migrate a running process, a process has many dependencies. It might depend on libraries, it might be using shared memory with another process. So there are many things for a process that you have to worry about. Whereas migrating a VM, since it is almost like a real machine, migrating it is much easier because a VM has a much narrower interface. It does not have too many things, as we'll see soon. There are roughly two main techniques for VM live migration that are commonly called pre-copy and post-copy. So these are two of the main papers that have proposed these ideas. And of course, there's a lot of follow-up research on this. So these are the two papers that we'll be referring to in today's lecture. So when we say VM live migration, what is migrated? Mainly these two things are migrated. The CPU context of a VM, that is whatever are the values of the CPU registers when a VM is running, that CPU context is migrated, and main memory, contents of the main memory, the memory pages of the VM are also migrated from the source to the target. Okay, so these are the two main things that are to be migrated, and this is easier than process. You can see, right? You don't have to see, is this process, what shared libraries is it using, all of those things you don't have to worry about, right? You just take the CPU context, main memory contents, and you migrate it. So what about other devices and IO devices, disk and so on, right? So most of these VM migration techniques, like the papers we are considering also, do not deal with disk migration. They assume that both the source and target have a common network attached storage, or NAS, that is a common storage accessible from both locations, or they assume that the disk has been mirrored, contents of the disk have been copied. So we do not have to live migrate disk data. See, things like memory are constantly changing when applications are running, right? So those are much harder to migrate, and that is what we'll focus on. Whereas disk contents are fairly static, so you can just copy them across or use a common network attached storage. So what about the network? So this VM might have a virtual Ethernet device, say, that is receiving packets here. When it moves to a new location, what happens? So these papers again don't discuss it in a lot of detail, but there are many simple techniques in which the network interface can be migrated. For example, you can migrate the IP address, right? Whatever IP address you've given this host, this virtual host, you can migrate that IP address here. This is the same as just unplugging a machine and plugging it in a different network location with the same IP address, right? So when this happens, what happens? You will advertise, you will send an ARP message which will advertise the new MAC address. So at the target machine, you might have a new MAC address given to this VM for the same IP address. So this new IP to MAC address mapping, you will update it via an ARP message during the migration. When you do that, what will happen? Whatever packets were being sent to this MAC address will now get redirected to this new MAC address, right? The IP address is the same, but the MAC address has changed, and you update all the other switches in your LAN with this new MAC address. So note that we assume that both hosts are on the same LAN. That is the common case scenario for migration. So it's enough if you just tell the switches about the new MAC address. Or you can also migrate with the MAC address at the layer 2 itself. You can do your migration. This same MAC address, you take it to this new location, and then the switches will learn of the new MAC address location. Like most switches in switched Ethernet networks today are learning switches. They learn where MAC addresses are located. And if you unplug a machine, plug it in a different location, the switches will learn that the MAC address has migrated. So whatever way you do, whether it is migrate the IP address and announce via ARP, or migrate the MAC address and let the switches learn, whatever you do, the network migration is equivalent to a host moving from one network location to the other on the same LAN, which can be easily handled. And once you do this migration, network packets, the switches will learn and they will redirect the packets to the new location. Of course, there might be some small transient losses during the migration itself, but that is still okay. Your application will still continue to run and you can still have a live migration. So whenever a machine moves from the source to the target, of course, you have to provision IO devices at the target also and map them to the underlying physical devices. So this will be taken care of, coordinated between the source and target hypervisors. Anyway, the virtual machine only has virtual devices most of the time, right? So you can provision similar virtual devices at the target and map them to underlying physical devices. So whenever you have direct device assignment or device pass through, like for example, SRIOV, if a VM is directly bound to a physical device or a slice of a physical device, in such cases, migration is a little bit harder because you have to change the configuration of the underlying physical device. For example, if you have an SRIOV NIC here, this VM was given one VF, you might have to find another VF for it at a target location, right? So that makes it a little bit harder. But otherwise, if you're just using virtual IO devices and IO by emulation, this migration of IO devices is not a big problem. So now what are the main steps to migrate a VM? So here are the broad steps. Suppose we have a host A VM is running on host A. While this VM is running, we want to move it to host B. So what do? First, both hypervisors will coordinate with each other. You will set up the target host B, reserve resources with respect to CPU cores, memory, IO devices, whatever has to be reserved. The target host is prepared. And then the main things now you have to migrate are the CPU context and memory, right? So first, what will you do? You might push some memory from location A to location B. Some RAM pages you might push. And then there is what is called the stop and copy phase. So memory contents you can push even when the VM is running. But CPU context you cannot push when the VM is running. Why? Because the CPU context is constantly changing when a process is running on a CPU, when a VM is running on a CPU. So memory, maybe some memory pages are changing and some are not changing. So the pages which are not being used currently, you can push. But you cannot push CPU context when the VM is running. For that, you have to stop the VM and then copy the CPU context. And within the stop and copy phase, you can also copy some more memory. So the stop and copy phase is mainly to copy the CPU context, because this cannot be copied when the VM is running live. And then once the VM starts at host B, right, you push some memory initially, you stop the VM and copied the context and started the VM at host B now. At this point, any memory that is still left over at A can be pulled after the VM starts at B. Okay, so this push phase and pull phase both happen when the VM is running. Only the stop and copy phase is when the VM is stopped to transfer the CPU context. And after everything is done, after all memory has been pulled from host A, you can clean up the state at host A, and at this point the migration has completed, right? So now what is the total time needed for migration? I mean, leaving aside this time to prep the hosts and all of that, this push, stop and copy, pull, these three phases together account for the total migration time. And out of this time, the time taken for step 3 is particularly important, because this is the downtime of the service. For example, if you have a web server running inside the VM, for the duration of the stop and copy, the web server will be down, right? It cannot handle any web requests. So this time is particularly important. And of course, during this entire migration, steps 2, 3, and 4 also, the performance of the VM will be slightly affected, right? So to measure how good a VM migration technique is, we'll consider these two times, the total migration time as well as the service downtime. Okay, and there are also few other metrics. For example, when the migration is happening, what is the impact on application performance? Note that we are promising live migration. Ideally, the application should continue to run. So is that happening? Is the application affected? How much of the network bandwidth is used? Are you congesting the network? How much of memory has been transferred in total? So all of these are some of the other metrics we are going to consider when we try to evaluate and compare multiple VM live migration techniques. So this is in general a broad outline for how you would migrate any VM. Okay, so in this broad design, there are multiple flavors, multiple migration systems proposed. So one is of course the easiest, pure stop and copy. That is, you do not push any memory beforehand, you don't pull any memory after migration. Instead, when you have to migrate a VM, you first stop the VM. All the CPU context, all the memory, everything is transferred when the VM has been stopped, and then you restart it at a new location. Right? So this is, of course, the most obvious thing you will have to do, and this is equivalent to migrating a physical machine. If you have to migrate a physical machine from one location to the other, you shut it down here, and then you move it and you restart it in another location, right? So that is what this pure stop and copy is. But of course, this is very inefficient, right? It will take a lot of time. Even though you don't have to physically push a machine around, you still have to transfer a lot of memory. If your VM has 1 GB, 2 GB memory, you have to transfer a lot of it over the network. That might take a long time, few tens of seconds. And you cannot call that live migration, right? If your web server is down for a full 1 or 2 minutes, you cannot call that as live migration. So there is of course pure stop and copy, but we won't be talking much about that today. So the next sensible idea is what is called pre-copy, right? So in this, most of the state is transferred in the initial push phase. While the VM is still running at the source location, at the old location, you try to push as much of its memory as possible to the target. Okay, and of course you can't push all of it because the VM is still running and it might still be using some memory, writing to some memory, changing it. So you can't push all the memory while the VM is running. So after this initial push phase, you will then briefly stop the VM, do a stop and copy phase where some last bits of memory that could not be transferred because the VM was actively using it, and the CPU context. Of course, CPU context is always changing, so you can never capture it and transfer it. So these two, a small bit of memory and the CPU context, will be transferred in the stop and copy phase, right? So that migration technique is called pre-copy because you're copying before the VM is migrated. And another technique is what is called post-copy. That is, you don't push anything, you just stop the VM first and you transfer the bare minimum memory and CPU context required to start the VM at the target. So you're not transferring all the memory first. You're only taking the bare minimum needed to start the VM there. And the remaining memory will be pulled on demand. Once the VM starts in the new location, as and when it needs memory, you will keep pulling it on demand from the old location, right? So this is pre-copy versus post-copy. And of course, you can always have a hybrid where you do a mix of both, where you push some memory initially, then you do stop and copy, and you don't push everything. And once you start at the new location, you can then pull whatever unimportant pieces were left over, you can pull those, right? So you can do a mix of pre-copy and post-copy, which is called the hybrid technique. Okay, so in this lecture, we are going to be studying a paper that initially proposed the pre-copy technique and a paper that proposed the post-copy technique. And of course, there are a lot of optimizations and follow-up research to these two papers, but we will be discussing the basic ideas of these papers in this lecture. So let's start with pre-copy based live migration. So pre-copy is also called iterative pre-copy, right? Because you cannot pre-copy just once. So what if you copied some memory and that memory changed again when the VM is still continuing to run? then you have to copy it again, right? So your pre-copy might involve multiple rounds of copying the same memory again and again. That is why it is also called iterative pre-copy. So you have multiple rounds of this iterative pre-copy. After some point you say, okay, I've copied enough, I've pushed enough memory to the target, and then you stop and copy. You stop the VM, you copy whatever is left to the target and start the VM in the target location. Okay. And you initially your first round, you push all the pages, and then every subsequent round you will only have to copy the pages that were dirtied in the previous round. So initially the VM is running, you first make a copy of all its memory to the target location. Now while you're doing it, the VM might have written to some pages, and what you have at the target now becomes old data. The VM has changed it in the original location. Then you copy it once again, you copy it once again, right? So in every round, so iterative pre-copy has multiple rounds. In each round you will copy whatever was dirtied in the previous round. You begin with copying everything, and then you keep on adding deltas to it. Oh, you copied page number 4, but while you were copying it, the VM changed it again, you copy it once again, so that your target has the latest version. So the problem with this is a page may be copied multiple times, right? So here is a flow chart of how iterative pre-copy based live migration happens. This is from the paper. In stage 0, you select an alternate host and you prepare it, and if you have to mirror things like the disk and so on, you do all of that. You reserve enough resources, CPU, memory at the target host. So all of this, the VM is just running on your initial host A. Okay, then your iterative pre-copy starts. What you do is you iteratively copy. You enable shadow paging. We'll see what that is in a little bit. And you copy all memory in the first round. Then from second round onwards, every round will copy only the memory that was dirtied and hence changed in the previous round. So after multiple rounds like this, you decide you've had enough of this iterative pre-copy. Then you do stop and copy. This is where the VM is down. So in this pre-copy stage, the VM is still live, it is running, though its performance may be impacted a little bit. And now in the stop and copy is when the VM is fully shut down, and whatever is the CPU context, remaining memory, you copy all of that to host B, and you do any things like generating ARP to redirect traffic, the network interface is migrated, all of that is done. And then you release the host A. At this point, you're done with your transfer. And then of course, at the new location, you start your VM connected to the IO devices and everything in the new location, and you're all set to go, right? So this is the timeline of pre-copy. So one thing to note is some pages, which are usually called the writable working set, the working set of the application. So an application might be using most of its pages rarely, but a small set of pages it will use very frequently. This is called the writable working set of the application. So this writable working set may be copied in multiple rounds because the application is constantly writing to it, constantly dirtying these pages. So you copy it once, and by the time you've come back, it has dirtied it again you copy. So this can happen multiple times. And these pages, there's probably no way you can satisfactorily copy them in the iterative pre-copy stage. So no matter how many times you transfer them, there will still be new versions being generated for these pages. So finally, you have to transfer them in stop and copy. Okay, so how many rounds do you run? When do you stop? So it's easy to see that you will have diminishing returns. As you keep on running more and more rounds, this process may never terminate, right? An application that is running may always keep dirtying pages. So how long will you keep transferring? So therefore, at some point you say, okay, I've had enough, and you stop. Usually that is when the rate of dirtying is greater than the rate of transfer. Suppose you taking your application is dirtying pages much faster than you can keep up and transfer. At that point you say, okay, fine, there's no point doing this iterative pre-copy anymore, I will go ahead and stop the VM and transfer. So usually whatever is the frequently written pages, right, they will be hard to keep up in iterative pre-copy, and those will be transferred in their final version will be transferred in the stop and copy phase. Okay, so here is a small experiment from the paper where they take a database application and they show what happens to this application during iterative pre-copy. So the orange bars that you, sorry, the gray bars that you see here are basically indicating the rate at which pages are being dirtied by the application. So you can see the application is dirtying a few thousand pages every second. Okay. And then the red, blue, green, and yellow lines, they basically indicate if you had stopped after 1 round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 rounds, what would have been the downtime of the application. Okay, if you did 1 round of pre-copy, then the downtime of the application would have been, as you can see, between 2 and 3 seconds. Okay, so first, if you didn't do any pre-copy, if you just did stop and copy, this is a 512 MB VM, you have 128 Mbps network bandwidth. So to transfer this 512 MB, you will need 32 seconds, right? That will be your downtime, the bare minimum downtime to transfer the entire VM memory image to the target host, right? So this is very high. You cannot call this live migration. But with just 1 round of pre-copy, that is, you copy all the memory once, and then in the stop and copy phase, you only copy whatever was dirtied in the pre-copy round. With that, your downtime goes down. You can see the red curve goes down to 2 to 3 seconds. That is a huge improvement. And after that, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, and so on, you're down to about 1 second or so, right? So that is a huge reduction in the stop and copy phase, in the downtime of the application. And therefore, iterative pre-copy is a good idea. Even though you might end up transferring a page multiple times in multiple rounds, it might be inefficient, but still, it gives you a very small downtime. So the next question comes up, how do you figure this out? How do you know what pages have been dirtied in the previous round and hence should be transferred in the next round of iterative pre-copy? How do you decide that? So this paper itself is based on the Zen hypervisor. So their techniques are based on what Zen does for its memory management. Of course, a similar implementation can exist for other hypervisors as well. So in this paper, what they mention is as follows, right? So normally, if you recall, Zen does not normally use shadow page tables. In Zen, the original page table maintained by the guest itself, the guest page table itself has the guest virtual to host physical mapping. Because the guest OSs are para-virtualized, they're aware of virtualization. They are given the guest physical to host physical mappings are exposed to them. So the guest itself can construct the final page table from guest virtual to host physical. So you don't need anything like extended page tables or shadow page tables in general in Zen, right? But during migration, Zen will shift to using shadow page tables because you need to track what pages are dirtied and so on. So Zen will shift to using shadow page tables, and all the migration logic is managed by software running in domain 0. Okay, so instead of guest page tables, you will use shadow page tables in Zen. If you remember shadow page tables, we had seen that this was what was used when hardware support was not available. For example, the VMware Workstation used shadow page tables. So we discussed this idea before. This is a higher overhead than just keeping the page table in the guest itself. But during migration, Zen will use shadow page tables. So, and how does this work? So these shadow page tables are constructed for every round of the pre-copy. The shadow page table is reinitialized and it is built upon demand. So in addition to the shadow page table, you also maintain a dirty bitmap. That is a bitmap indicating which pages are dirtied in that round. And how are these things constructed? Initially, your shadow page table is empty at the start of every round. And your CR3 register is pointing to this page table. Therefore, any access, page access by the guest will cause a page fault to Zen. Okay, now suppose some page is accessed, there is a page fault to Zen. The Zen will go back to the guest page table, look at the guest page table and populate its shadow copy on demand. But when it does that, normal shadow page table will take the permissions. If this page was a read-write page, it will mark the page as read-write in the shadow page table also. But now what you will do is, a page table is marked as read-only initially. Okay, if the guest performed a read on a page, even though it has write access, the page table entry itself will indicate that it is a read-only page. That is, you're somehow restricting the guest from writing to any of its memory. All page table entries by default are read-only in the shadow. Why? Because whenever the guest writes to a page, if there is a valid write access to a page, then because the page table entry is read only, it will trap once again to Zen, and then Zen can know, aha, the guest has written to this page, therefore I have to mark this page as dirty in the page table and in my dirty bitmap. So Zen will make note of that, and then it will let the guest write to a page. Okay, so whenever the guest wants to write to a page, because by default all guest memory is read only, that will trap to Zen, and Zen will give the permission to write after making note that that page has been marked as dirty in the dirty bitmap. Okay, so once you make note of the page as dirty in the bitmap, then the page in the page table, the page is given read write permissions, and all subsequent writes don't have to cause a page fault, they will go as normal. Okay, so what have you achieved by this? You have gotten to know which guest pages have been written to, which guest memory has been written to in this particular round. And at the end of the round, now you know in this round all these pages are marked as dirty, you know what the dirty bitmap is, and you can then take those pages and mark them for transfer. You can tell the migration software that go ahead, transfer these pages in this round of the iterative pre-copy. And at the end of the round, of course, you will reinitialize the shadow page table and the dirty bitmap, because you only want the delta from one round to the other, right? If the pages continue to exist in the bitmap, then you will transfer them unnecessarily in the next round also. Therefore, you will reinitialize them at the end of every round. And finally, at the end of the last round, whatever dirty pages are there, you're going to copy them in the stop and copy phase. So once after all of this, the guest page table moves to the new location. Note that you have to still modify the guest page table to have the new physical address mappings, right? The physical address mappings, the GPA to HPA mappings would have changed. So in the new location, you will update the guest page table before starting the guest running normally once again. Note that the shadow page table in Zen is used only during migration. At the end of migration, you go back to just having one page table because it is simply more efficient instead of maintaining two separate copies like this. So there can be some optimizations to the method we've described so far. So for example, sometimes you may be able to avoid transferring a page multiple times. How? Suppose you're transferring a page and you check that you're in round n, a page has been dirtied, and while round n+1 is going on, you're transferring the pages of round n. When you're about to transmit a page, you check the current round's bitmap and you see that, oh, this page has been dirtied once again. I still haven't even transferred the older version, but again the page has been dirtied. Then there's no point sending the older version of the page, right? So what do you do in such cases? You skip a page. You skip transmitting this page. Okay, so at the end of round n, you make a copy of all the pages that have been dirtied in round n, and while transferring them, if the page has once again been dirtied in round n+1, then you do not transfer it in round n, because anyway it will be transferred in round n+1 again. Okay, and you can also do a few other optimizations. For example, you can only keep your main application running, and all other non-interactive processes which are dirtying pages can be moved into the wait queue, right? You needn't kill them, but you can just deschedule them, keep them in the wait queue so that they don't generate dirty pages anymore. That is, you can pause the execution of non-essential processes until migration completes to keep this memory load low. And you can also in general reduce your memory footprint, free up page cache pages and any other unnecessary pages, so that you have fewer pages to transfer overall, right? So just like how we've seen ballooning, you can request a guest OS to free up some memory voluntarily. So that's in general anyway a good idea, so that you have lesser memory to deal with during the migration. So how does all of this perform? So based on the experiments in the paper, they have found that the downtime is around a few hundreds of milliseconds, and the total migration time, including the iterative pre-copy, is few tens of seconds, right? So this is a still very long total migration time because of the pre-copy stages, but the downtime itself is small enough that interactive applications can do fine. Though for memory intensive applications that are writing a lot of memory, for such applications, this total migration time can get longer and longer due to multiple rounds of pre-copy. So here is an experiment from the paper where they have a web server that is running and it's being migrated. So around this time is where you see the migration starts. So on the y-axis, they plot the throughput, the performance of the web server, right? So the web server is initially giving you some throughput. Once the migration starts, the performance is slightly affected, right? During the various pre-copy stages, you can see the performance slightly dips. And there is a small break in throughput of the web server due to the downtime. You can see a downtime of 165 milliseconds. And then after that, once the migration completes, the web server is back to its old throughput again, right? So this is almost as good as no impact on web server's performance. So that was the story about pre-copy based migration. So the next thing is post-copy based live migration, right? So this figure gives you the contrast between pre-copy and post-copy. In pre-copy, during the preparation stage, when the VM is live, you do multiple rounds of pre-copy, and then there is a downtime, and immediately you can resume the VM. Whereas with post-copy, there is no preparation time. There is no pre-copy rounds. You first move whatever memory you have to move, the bare minimum memory that you have to move. You move it to the target. You immediately resume the machine there, and whatever is missing, there'll be page faults for the memory that's missing, and you will fetch them on demand at the target, right? So this is post copy. You're copying most of the memory after the VM has started on the target. So why is this a good idea? Why do you want to do it? So with post copy, you can avoid multiple transfers of the same page that would have happened in pre-copy. In pre-copy, what happens? You transfer a page, but by the time the transfer is done, it's modified again. So you have to transfer it again. So a page can potentially be transferred multiple times. Whereas with post-copy, once you move, you'll only transfer a page only once, right? Because the final copy of whatever you're modifying is already at the target. So you will end up transferring pages only once over the network. So how does post copy work? You'll prepare the target, stop the VM, copy the CPU context and whatever bare minimum memory is needed. That is called non-pageable memory, right? For which page fault should not happen. Such memory you will copy to the target, and you will resume the VM at the target. And whatever memory is not there, this is equivalent to every OS is capable of handling page faults anyways, right? Regular operating systems do demand paging. They don't have all memory in RAM all the time, all pages in RAM. Some pages could be pushed over to a swap disk. So when such pages are accessed, there's a page fault and you fetch the page from disk. So a similar mechanism can happen. When the VM starts at the target, not all memory will be present. And whenever there is a page fault, you will pull this memory from the source via the demand paging mechanism on demand as and when needed, right? So this page fault handling mechanism can handle that and fetch the page from the source. So therefore, every page is either transferred during the stop and copy phase or via demand paging, right? You don't have multiple copies of the same page being sent over the network. And of course, this basic idea can have many optimizations, because if you are having a lot of page faults at the target, if you start with nothing at the target and have a lot of page faults, your performance can suffer. So there are a few optimizations proposed in this post-copy paper. One is, of course, active pushing, right? Instead of waiting for a page fault to happen at the target, the source can actively identify some important pages and proactively push them before a page fault occurs, right? In addition to pulling pages via page faults, you can also keep proactively pushing important pages. Another optimization you can do is what is called pre-paging. That is, when a page fault occurs, you can sort of proactively prefetch the next few pages. So a bubble of pages, a few pages before and after a page fault, that, if it's a piece of code, a data structure, the next few pages also may be accessed. So you can proactively push pages around this bubble around a page fault. Okay, so this is called pre-paging. These two concepts are somewhat similar. And another optimization you can do is what is called dynamic self-ballooning. That is, a VM by itself will free up some unnecessary memory and give it back to the hypervisor. So even if your VM image is say 2 GB, the VM can just say, okay, I don't need so much memory, all my page cache and unnecessary things. It can free up and give back unnecessary memory to the hypervisor so that there is lesser memory to deal with during the migration phase. Okay, and the VM guest OS can do this carefully without hurting application performance, right? So we've discussed this during pre-copy. This optimization can be applied during pre-copy as well. And of course, you can also optimize post-copy by throwing in one round of pre-copy at the beginning, like the hybrid approach, and this might make things much better. So some implementation details once again on Zen. So how do you track these page faults, right? So how are pages pulled at the target? So at the target, how do you realize, oh, this page is not in my memory and I have to go fetch it from the source? So this paper describes an implementation that is called pseudo paging, right? So what is pseudo paging? Initially, what you will do is at the source VM, before your migration starts, you're going to pretend like you have very little physical memory. So what happens in general for an operating system, if it has very little physical frames, a lot of the virtual pages will be in the swap space in some paging device or a swap device on disk, right? You will put all your pages on disk, and as and when needed, you will be bringing them into the little bit of memory that you have, right? So you will try to emulate a similar scenario here. So what this paper does is, it will kind of tell every guest, oh look, you have to push all your memory into a swap device. It will give it an illusion that there's no RAM left. So whatever memory can be paged, all the pageable memory will be sent into this pseudo swap device. Note that it's not a real swap device or anything, it's just in memory swap device only. That's why we are calling it a pseudo swap device. This is just a dummy device that's part of domain 0. It's nothing is getting written to disk or anything. It is still in memory. There's no copy. You're just, transferring pages. This page that belonged to the guest domain, you're transferring it to domain 0 and assigning it to a pseudo device, right? And the guest page table will automatically get updated, indicating that, oh, this page is no longer assigned a physical frame. It is actually on the swap device. So you force the guest to swap out all memory that is pageable. Note that some part of memory is not pageable, right? Some important kernel memory, you can never push it to swap disk. It's always pinned to memory. So such memory will of course stay. The rest of it will be paged to a dummy device. Okay. And then you will migrate the VM from the source to the target, and only the non-pageable memory will be transferred during the stop and copy phase. And when the guest resumes at the target, now what will happen? This is just like page faults happening and fetching things via from your swap device, right? If you have a lot of pages on your swap device, there'll be a lot of page faults, and every time a page fault happens, instead of getting it from the disk as a normal page fault handler would do, this special swap device driver that is there will actually fetch it over the network from the source hypervisor. So when a page fault occurs at the target VM, where are all the pages? Your page table indicates that these are stored in some swap device. So you will invoke the swap device driver to say, go fetch these pages for me from the swap device. But that swap device driver is a special device driver. It won't look in the disk because it knows it has not been swapped into the disk. But it knows that these pages are there in the source hypervisor's DOM 0. So it will go to that domain 0 of the source and get the pages as and when page faults happen. Right? So you're utilizing the regular page fault mechanism itself of the operating system, of the guest operating system, to identify which pages are not present at the guest and manage to get them from the source to the target. Of course, this whole thing could have also been done with shadow page tables. Instead of the regular guest page table, you move to a shadow page table. And in the shadow page table, you can mark which pages are there, which pages are not there, which guest physical pages are not assigned a host physical page. You will know that. So instead of changing the guest page table at the hypervisor level itself, you can move to shadow page tables, and your shadow page table will tell you which page is non-existent, and you can fetch them from the source, right? So much like pre-copy, once you move to shadow page table, the Zen hypervisor has full control over the page table. It can fetch pages as and when needed, right? So this is what happens in uncooperative swapping, for example, right? when you use shadow page tables, without the guest knowledge, the host has taken away some pages. It will be a similar scenario. So there will be page faults, which will trap to the hypervisor, not to the guest, because the guest is not involved here in the shadow page table. They'll trap to the hypervisor, and the hypervisor will fetch the pages from the source. So now we've seen pre-copy, post-copy. Now let's answer this question of what happens if one of these source or target hosts fails during this migration. So what if the target machine fails during migration? So in pre-copy, it is simple, right? If your target machine fails, then you simply abort. You did a few iterative pre-copy rounds, you push some memory on there. Now the target machine has failed. So then what do? Nothing is lost. You can restart the migration process with another target. So this is okay because the latest state is on your source machine only. Nothing has gone wrong. But with post copy, you have a bigger problem. Why? Now you moved from the source to the target. You're writing to memory at the target. And now if your target, in between this process, if your target fails, then whatever you have at the source is stale memory. That memory has changed after it has gone to the target. Therefore, it is very hard to recover, right? If the target crashes, it is very hard to recover during post copy. And of course, if the source crashes before you've migrated anything, in both schemes, it is difficult, right? Your main copy of the data is lost. So recovering from source failures is hard in both migration techniques. So in general, pre-copy is a little bit more resilient to random machine failures. So now that we've seen the technique of post-copy, how does its performance compare to pre-copy? So you would normally expect that post-copy may have a longer downtime because there's a lot more memory that has to be transferred in that initial stop and copy phase. But the total migration time and the number of pages transferred, all of that can be lower because you're avoiding multiple transfers of the same page. Right, so here the paper, the post copy paper has a few results. So on the left side is the post copy experiment, on the right side is the pre copy experiment. So here you have NetPerf, which is a networking client server kind of an application running, and on the y-axis, x-axis is time, and on the y-axis you can see the throughput of the application's performance. So in post copy, you can see that there are some disruptions to the application performance when it, when you initiate migration, some self-ballooning, dynamic self-ballooning is done, right? And then there's a small disruption due to the stop and copy phase. And once you resume at the target, due to all the page faults also, there is some impact on performance. And finally, the migration completes and everything is back to normal. For pre-copy, you will see that this migration time is longer and the disruption is longer. All during the iterative pre-copy stages, you see a longer disruption to the application, but the total downtime itself is slightly shorter. And once the migration completes, there are no further disturbances because everything is done by now. So a few more graphs here, and here the results are for several applications. They have compared multiple metrics. With respect to pages transferred, you can see that pre-copy transfers many more pages than post-copy because some pages are transferred multiple times. And the total migration time is also higher for pre-copy because this iterative stage can go on for a long time. But the downtime is where pre-copy wins, right? Pre-copy has a much lesser downtime than post-copy because you have very little left for the stop and copy phase. So the authors in the paper also say because of their pseudo paging device, they have some overheads, and if they optimize their system further, they hope to bring down this downtime. But in general, you can always expect this, that post copy will have a higher downtime than pre copy because you're starting out with nothing at the target, right? So you have to take a lot of things initially in the stop and copy phase with you to resume a VM at the target. So in summary, in this lecture, we have studied various VM live migration techniques. That is, we've studied the iterative pre-copy technique as well as the post-copy technique. And we've seen how these are implemented on Zen, and we've also seen a basic performance comparison. So to answer the question of which is better, in general, the prevailing wisdom is that pre-copy is better suited for interactive applications whereas post copy is better for memory intensive applications that write to a large number of pages, so that you can avoid this multiple transfers of the same page. And of course, most migration techniques use some hybrid of both these ideas.